as compromised as it was, as devastated as I personally was that a charter school would never ever be formed, all of a sudden, 2 days later, comes this announcement by U.S. Senator David Durenberger, a Republican from Minnesota, on the Senate floor, on the U.S. Senate floor, lauding the passage of this bipartisan charter school bill. He was telling his colleagues that this was an alternative, an opportunity to address some of the deficiencies in our public education system. It was a pragmatic public school choice solution. He was telling his colleagues that this was the middle ground between the status quo supported by House Democrats who just really wanted to give more money to the education system, and President George H.W. Bush, who wanted to have private school vouchers. This was a solution, public school choice, that could bring more opportunity and choices into our system. Just about a week later, when the bill came before our governor, he had to sign it because it was attached to the whole education bill, so he couldn't veto it. So just after he signed it, another press release came out that surprised me, and that was from Governor Bill Clinton, then chairman of the Democratic Leadership Council, of which I was a member. I didn't even know he was following this. But all of a sudden, out comes a press release saying that this was an example of bipartisan passage of a pragmatic solution to our education system issues. So when the bill was passed, I was personally devastated. I didn't think there would ever be a charter school that would come out of this legislation. So that's why I was so surprised that 2 days later, our United States Senator, Senator David Durenberger, lauded the passage of this bill on the floor of the United States Senate as a pragmatic alternative to what was going on in the debate that year between the status quo of the House Democrats, who just wanted to give more money to education, and the position of President George H.W. Bush, who wanted to have private school vouchers. I was equally surprised when just a week later, the chairman of the Democratic Leadership Council, Governor Bill Clinton, submitted a press release that said the same thing, that this was an opportunity for pragmatic public school choice that could in fact bring great change to our public school system. And so even though I was devastated, thinking we had failed, all of a sudden a national debate was kicked off. Meanwhile, back in Minnesota, things were not going so well. And just as I expected, those gatekeeper school boards were holding back the charter school applicants. And of the first 9 applications submitted, 7 were declined. The only 2 that made it through were, first, City Academy, which served those students who had dropped out of school, and second was a special needs school called Metro Deaf School. So it was true that the experience is what caused us to come back and strengthen the legislation 2 years later and to include a new authorizer or an appeal to the State Board of Education so that there was an alternative. And that was the start of a number of new authorizers in Minnesota, including large nonprofit organizations, higher education institutions, and single-purpose chartering boards that did nothing but do chartering. This was really important for a robust charter sector to have multiple authorizers. One of those authorizers, by the way, was my very favorite, and that was the first union-initiated charter school authorizer in the country.